Welcome CSE 230, Fall 2022. We still have email issues and all that, but I just wanted to go over something after looking at some of your discussion responses to discussion questions. And one of them, I don't think is really a good discussion question. I think the way I worded it wasn't very good. So I just want to go over a couple things because I think some people didn't understand some of the issues and some of them were just confusing. So let me try and visually go over some things right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new repel. And again, it seems like they're still going through some changes at Replit. So I have this new interface and it's showing Ghost Rider and things like that. So I know in some of the videos things look a little bit different, but hopefully you're able to work through that a little bit. So I'll try to address some of those as I go here. So let me create a new repel. And I'm going to do an HTML, CSS, and JS. And I'm just going to call it Discuss 6 and 7 because that's where I saw those questions. And I'll just put Fall 22 just so I know. And I'll create my repel. Now here, this stuff's new over here, these tools, so I haven't even seen this before. And also what they're doing here in this hello world, they're also putting a little link here with made with Replit or made with Replit down here. So if you refresh this here, you'll see this little thing on the bottom. Actually, if you open it up in a new page, I'll do that. You'll get this made with Replit down here. And I don't even need this, so let me move this over. But this is kind of new, this script here. And I just want to point out that they have hello world, which is that up there, or this. And then they also have script source equals script.js. And meaning it's pointing to this. But if you go here, there's no JavaScript in here. So I don't even know why that's there. It's not really doing anything. So I'm going to get rid of hello world and get rid of that script for now. Now, this is the badge on the page and all that kind of stuff. I guess you could leave it there. This is the comment, this is the badge. And notice that the JavaScript is actually coming from their website. So you're not doing the JavaScript in here. They have it on their site. That's where it's getting that blue kind of color for that badge. So if you want to take it out, leave it there. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to take it out now just to remove some of the code that we have in here so we don't have so much code. Now, a couple things I want to put in here inside a body. I'm just going to put a container. I'm just going to call it div.container. That's it. Right now, I'll just make one container and hit tab. And it'll make a container. And in there, I'm going to make 5 paragraphs. So I can go p dot, and I'll give them a class name of par. That's what the dot is. Dot par means, let's make sure it's a dot, and it is. So dot par means I'm going to make paragraph with a class name par, just like I made things column name call. So I'm just calling them par right now, p.par. And I'm going to put times 5, so I get 5 of them. And then inside each one, I'm just going to put lorem 20 for now. I'll put lorem ipsum 20. So there's 5 paragraphs, and inside all of them, they have 20-word paragraphs with this kind of filler text. And then I could hit tab. So 5 paragraphs, they all have the class name par, and they have lorem 20 inside. I'll hit tab, and there they are. And what I'll do is I'll go here, and I'll refresh this. So there's my 5 paragraphs right now. And I could have made them longer if I wanted. Let's say I want 30 words in there or 40 words in there. I could have gone here and deleted all this stuff. I'll delete it all. And do it again. I'll do p.par. And then times 5, make the paragraphs first, and then inside there, using that greater than sign, I'll put lorem, and I'll do 40. Maybe I'll do 40 right now, and I'll hit tab. And now when I refresh it, the paragraphs are a little longer. Now, obviously, if I shorten those paragraphs, they'll go down the page. And what I want to show you here is a couple things. Is one, I used an example in the one discussion of H1 P and then H1 greater than sign P, and I really was talking about something inside there, so I'll get to that. That's why I'm going to use container, not an H1, because H1 is just an element, a headline, and then a P is after it. So that wasn't a good example in that discussion. But also the discussion about multiple class names. And what I'll do now, this thing is already pre-linked to style.css. And if you want to call it styles, put styles here. And if you want to rename this, you could put styles here. Or I think you could just double click on it. And I'm going to take all this stuff out. I don't need anything in here right now. Okay, so it's linked to the style sheet. And what I want to do is I want to make a couple classes. So I have a container class, and let me just go and make one. container, that's the div. I'll just give it a background color. If I just do background, and I'll make a light green color. So I'll just type in light green. And also, here's something else that somebody mentioned in one of the discussions, so I'll bring this up. RGB, I'll put RGB, parentheses, and then in there, I can do R, G, and B. So I'm going to put 0, and then 255, and then 0. Okay, and there's the color right there. Now, if I also want to make it a very light green, I could, for one thing, put the other colors up if I wanted to, or I can adjust the opacity. And to do that, I can make this RGBA, and I'll put another value here, and I'll just put 0.5, which would be 50%. So this would be 50% 0.5. So RGBA, red, green, blue, and then alpha. Alpha 0.5 is 50%. So if I did that to container, and let me just, I don't have to hit run, but let me just go here and refresh it. You can see my container that these paragraphs are in are that color right now. So let me go there and make it 0.3 and refresh it. And maybe 0.2 and refresh it. Okay, now it's a little bit lighter. That's what I want right now. I want that light green color. And let's just say for all my paragraphs, and I'll put .par, I want them to have the font family of, I'll just use a sans serif here, although I won't use the fonts that are here. I'll use Calibri, I'll use Arial for now, Arial, Calibri, Trebuchet, MS, and notice 2 words has to be in quotes, and then just sans serif. I'll just do that for now, and just to make sure that's working, font family, I'll go here, I'll refresh it. Now they're all in that font family. What else can I do with that? Well, I'll also make it larger. So I'll use font size, and I'll do maybe 110% for now. I won't use any M's or anything like that. I'll just put 110%, and I'll refresh it. Okay, and maybe I'll also do this. Maybe I'll take the container and I'll make it a little bit smaller. I'll make the container whatever percent of the background. Like, let's just put width. Now I could give it pixels, but let's just make it 60% and see what happens. You can see the container's 50%. So now I'm seeing my paragraphs there. And now let's say I want to change the line height on my individual paragraphs. And I'll do line height. And I'll do that in like 140% to see how that looks. So that's like the leading or the line spacing. Okay, now that's spread out. So I have 4 paragraphs like that, and my paragraphs have all these 3 properties here. And I could add different properties to them. I can add margin on either side, or I could add padding on the inside. I can also adjust the space before. Now right now there's just a default space before. Actually, let me take that out. Remember how we do that? We do a wildcard like that, and I'll just put margin 0, padding 0, and wipe all that out. Okay, that wiped it all out. I just refreshed it. And now let's say I want to put padding on my container. Let's put padding on the container. We'll go back here. Container, let's put a padding so that has space all around. Padding, and we'll do it all around, and I'll just use pixels for now. I'll just use 16 pixels per now. That would be 1em, so I'll just use that. And also, I might want space above each paragraph. I might want padding top, or I might want padding below. So let's do that. Let's put, for each paragraph, let's do padding. We could just do padding bottom. We can do them all, or just do padding bottom, and I'll put 12px right now, and just see what happens. So all the paragraphs have padding below, and maybe I'll do a little more. Maybe I'll do 16 below. I think that increased it. Okay, so we have 4 paragraphs that are exactly alike, and they have these qualities. And let's say I want one paragraph, the fourth one, to be a green color, the text to be green. Well, what can I do? Well, I can give that a second class. I can make a second class and call it dot par, and I'll put green. That'll be a class name. And I'll just use color, and I'll just use green for now. And again, if I click on here, I could change the color if I want to make it dark. You can see it's going a darker green right now. Let's say, and you can even look at the RGB, although it won't put in the RGB. If I see RGB there and I do that, it just will still put hex when I change it. So it'll just do that. But I could do this. Remember, I could do RGB, and it's giving me a little hint on how to do it here. But in parentheses, I can put 0, 100, 0. And par green will get that dark green. Now, I didn't say which one was par green. It would be the fourth paragraph. So I would have to go to my index, find the fourth paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4, and give that a second class name. Remember, here's the idea of a second class name. Class equals par, and inside the quotes, you can go par green. And remember, you don't need to put two quotes there or anything like that. Class equals, you could put them all inside the quote, and you just put a space. So it's going to have two separate class names there. It'll have both class names. It'll have par and par green. So that particular paragraph should show up green. And let's refresh it. And it does. It shows up green. So for that paragraph. So that's kind of the idea of using two class names. And again, we have par, which is more general for all the paragraphs. And then we have par green, that's separate for that one. Now, we could have just made another one called par green and put all these things in here, but because it cascades, then we only need this. So it'll use the original one and add this. Otherwise, we would have to do this. We would have to, copy all this stuff. We could have done this, copied all of it, put it here, and now it has all the same things as par, but it has par green. So you could go here and say, oh, well, that's going to be par green. But the idea is you're just adding to it. So I don't have to make this its own. It'll still share all the other things. Why is that? Well, let's say I change paragraph. Let's say I change the paragraph and I say, oh, I don't want to use Arial. I want to use something else. Then I'd have to go change it here. So this is kind of the global place where the paragraph gets changed. And the only new thing is going to be the color. That's why I'm not going to copy everything. So all the paragraphs are going to be controlled by par. So every paragraph that's in there will be under par. But when I want to do something specific, then I can use par green. That's why I'm going to go in here and give this two class names. It's still going to be par, so it's still part of the par family. They're all par. And, maybe another one could be par blue or something. Maybe the last one could be par blue. I can make this par blue. Now, again, it doesn't look good like that, but I can make another class and call it par blue. And I could put color. And if I wanted to use RGB, I'll use RGB. And remember, I'll use 0, 0, and I'll put in like 150 of blue. That'll be a darker blue. So that's RGB right there. So you can put in RGB. And now, if I go and look at this, it's not going to change because I didn't apply it yet. I didn't actually put it in there. But when I link it up, when I go back to my index and I say this last paragraph, you're not only going to be par, but you're also going to be par blue. Now, when I refresh it, that'll get par blue. And if I decide I want to change something, let's say I want to change the line height. Instead of 150, I want to make all these lines 160. That means all the paragraphs will have that. So I don't have to change it in par green. I don't have to change it in par blue. They only have the changes. So everything inherently is in here. So I can put this in here and I could change the padding, anything. So this controls all the paragraphs. This only controls the things that are different. So now that I made that 160, I'll refresh it, and all the paragraphs change, including these, but they retain what's different about them. So that's kind of the idea of two class names, is they have a class name which actually has something more specific. So this is the general class name for all the paragraphs. These are more specific. That's why we put two class names. That's why in here these have par, par green, par, par blue. You could do that to buttons. You can make a general button class name, and you can also have a more specific button class name. Keep in mind, in some of the newer videos with the buttons that we're using for JavaScript, we use a class name for styling the button, and we can use an ID for identifying the button to do a JavaScript event on it. So we use that as well for identifying it, to put a get element by ID. We use an ID for identifying. But with two class names, we're just being more specific. So general, more specific. Hopefully that answers that, because some people weren't kind of getting it from the answers that I was seeing, and some people just said, I don't know, which was good, because if you don't know, you don't know. It means somewhere along the line I didn't explain it that well. So hopefully this helps a little bit in terms of explaining that. And then also, one other thing I just want to point out about the discussion, because there was one discussion about H1P, what's the difference between that? And I just want to show something here. I'll go into a style, and I'll make a new style, and I'll target container and then P. Now container P, now there's nothing in here yet, that's why it's showing up in red. So container P, let's say I want to do color and just make it red for now. Container P red, that should mean all the paragraphs within there. Now this may override that, so I'm not sure what's going to happen with these. These may override that color, but let's just see what happens. Okay, it overrode everything. So basically what this means, and that's actually what I wanted to have happen, this means P, this means all the paragraphs inside container. So using H1 and P was not a good example, but this means all the P's inside container. That's what that means. So all the P's inside container, they all turn red, and they even overrode these. Now, the other thing was this. If you remember, I had a thing about that. That means the first child, the first descendant of container. Now, let's see what happens here. Now, does that mean it means the first one or the next one? And actually, if we do this, it shouldn't change anything, because it basically means, it doesn't mean the first one, it means it's a first descendant. Now, what does that mean? Well, these are the first descendant of that. Now, if I had a paragraph inside a paragraph, it wouldn't get that. They wouldn't get that, but it's a first descendant. So these, I guess what I'm saying here is, this probably isn't a good example either, but what I'm saying here is, this is the first descendant. If you have multiple things inside of multiple things, it'll be the first descendant. If you had another paragraph inside another paragraph or somewhere else, or if you had another, let's say you had another div and something else, it would only get these. So this is getting all the P's, and it's also getting the first descendant. And first descendant means, let me just point this out, hopefully this will help. First descendant means it's the first one inside of it. These are all children. These paragraphs are all children of container. Now let me just try something different here. Let's say I said body, the first descendant P of body. Let's see what happens here. Nothing happens. That's because P's are not a first child. They're not children of body. There's no children of body. There's body, and the only children is container. They're grandchildren. The P's are grandchildren. So this will only get the children, if that makes any sense. This will only get the children. So in body, the only children of body are none. So nothing's turning red. But the children of container, and I would have to show different, different family things. This is a very simple example. But these are all the children. So in this case, they work the same. So this means all the children of container. So they all turn red. And this means all the P's inside container. And they all turn red. So they actually mean the same thing here. I'll have to show you a different example where we have something inside of something. We have another container or another div and there's something else inside of it. But basically that greater than sign means the children. So all the P's in there are the children. They're first descendants of containers. So that works the same way. So this means the same as that in this case. The only time it doesn't is if it's not necessarily a first child. Like I said, when I did body here, if I did body P, let's see what happens if I do just body P. Now it only got these, but the other ones overrode them. See, that's where it gets a little confusing. These overrode them. But if it's the first child, it won't get anything because there's no first child of body. There's no child. Body doesn't have a first child. That's a paragraph. It's a grandchild. So that won't work there. And in the other cases, these things are overriding them. So that's why the green and the blue are overriding that. So if I go back here, I'll just put it back the way it was. I'll put it container, the class name container. And remember, this could be the children of container, or they could be all the P's in container. In our case, they're all the same. They're all the same. They're all first generation, and they're all the same. If I had another container here, they wouldn't be. If I put another container here, I'll put div dot container 2. I'll just put container 2 for now. And I'll hit tab, and I'll take the closing div tag, I'll cut it, and I'll put it at the end here. Have this one in, so I know that that's the inner one. Now, let's see what happens. Okay, that doesn't affect any of them because they're not children either. They're not the first generation of that. They're the first generation of container 2. So the first generation of container 2 will all turn red because they're now a child of that. So child, sometimes, it's not really a big thing to be going over because if you say all the P's in that, we haven't done a whole lot of multiple descendants. But again, this just means a child of that, and the other one means all of them. And you'd have to have a lot of different kind of embedded kind of situations or structures on the page to do that. But that's what that means. So I don't know if that was the greatest. I just wanted you to look it up kind of, but I don't know if it was the greatest example or if people understood that. I tried to do that when we did those paragraphs on one of the earlier assignments, but hopefully this, I don't know, hopefully it shows things a little bit better or clears some of that stuff up from the discussion boards that you were doing. So again, this is the descendant thing. This means first child, or it means without just a space, it means all of them. And using the second class is just using something more specific. So you still have one class that controls all of them, and then a more specific class that you can apply specific properties to without having to copy all of these. You don't have to make copies of all the stuff for every single one. So it cuts down on your code, and it also cuts down on your mistakes, because if you change something on, let's say you had 5 different paragraphs and you had to copy it 5 different times, you might not make all those changes. So you have one place for all the paragraphs, and then you have specific places for specific paragraphs. So hopefully that helps a little bit. If you want to do this assignment, I'll give you credit if you want to go and just kind of go through and do this and following. Maybe you'll get it a little bit. Maybe you'll learn something else. Maybe you'll even see some things that are happening with the interface here, because like I said, it's changed a little bit over the past year. They're making new changes, and they're still making changes. I don't even know what Ghostwriter is yet, so I haven't used that. Can I X out of that? I'll close out of XWriter. And they also have different tools here, which they kind of change the interface a little bit. So I think you can even move this stuff around. They have the new logo here with these little blocks. So things are changing here in Replit a little bit. So I'll have to be recording new videos because, even from one semester to the next, some things are changing. But hopefully the basics you're getting with this. So again, if you have any problem, just email me, and I could always record something, or I could look at your code and see what's going on. So hopefully that's okay. Right now, keep emailing me to therich@homastudio.com. I think the other email is starting to come back, but it's still not all the way yet. So email me at therich@homastudio.com if you want to get in touch with me. I'll look at your code right away. So, and I'm going through all of your other stuff. I'm going through discussion boards and other assignments. And again, any issues, believe me, we'll give you more time for certain stuff because we had all these tech problems at school with the network and all kinds of stuff that are still being worked out that aren't taken care of yet. So, be patient with that, and we'll certainly be patient with any of your assignments and things like that, and surveys and all that kind of stuff. So you'll have time to do all that, and we'll give you time for all your assignments that you need to catch up on. So anyway, just wanted to do that. So check that out as far as discussion 6 and 7. So I'll talk to you soon.